There are moments in history when silence becomes louder than any command, when a single act of conscience can echo across generations. In the scorched dust of a forward operating base, surrounded by the trembling earth of distant artillery, one such moment was born. The young man's name was Private Elias Ward, a recruit so new his uniform still held the scent of fresh cloth. To the hardened men of the 22nd Infantry, he was a shadow barely noticed. But to Captain Roland Harker, a man drunk on authority and accustomed to obedience, he was a test subject for power. The captain ruled through fear. His words were law, his punishments legendary. No one dared question his orders, not after what happened to the last soldier who hesitated. On that fateful morning inspection, Harker's boots struck the ground like gunfire, his eyes sharp with pride as he barked orders to move supplies meant for civilians into his private convoy. Black market goods disguised as logistics. The air grew thick with unease. Every soldier there understood it was wrong, but none dared speak, until Elias stepped forward. "Sir," he said, his tone even, respectful but unshaking, "that shipment is marked for the villages we're sworn to protect." The entire line went still. The captain turned, his smile thin, venomous. "Are you questioning me, soldier?" The recruit's pulse hammered, but his voice did not waver. "I'm refusing a corrupt order, sir." A tremor of disbelief passed through the men. The captain's face flushed crimson as he approached, inches from Elias's face. "You will obey or you will regret it." But Elias didn't move. He simply stared back, calm and resolute, as though the weight of every moral lesson ever taught stood behind his eyes. The wind howled through the open compound, and the smell of fuel and dust swirled between them. No one had ever defied Harker, not here, not like this. Then came the moment that would be remembered forever. With a sudden, violent motion, Harker reached for his sidearm, slamming it against the recruit's chest as a show of dominance. But Elias's reaction was faster, clean, instinctive, trained beyond hesitation. His hand shot up, gripping the weapon by the barrel, twisting it free in one swift, practiced motion. The sharp metallic crack of the safety engaging echoed like thunder. For one infinite second, time froze. The captain stood there, stunned, unarmed, before the entire formation. The wind seemed to vanish, leaving behind only silence, thick, absolute, and unbearable. Elias lowered the weapon, placed it on the ground between them, and saluted. "Respectfully, sir, orders that dishonor the uniform are not to be followed." No one breathed. No one spoke. The entire battalion stood paralyzed, witnessing something they would never forget. The captain's face drained of color, his arrogance stripped bare in front of his men. A commander from headquarters who had just entered the yard had seen everything. "Captain Harker," the officer said coldly, "I'll take it from here." The authority in his tone was final. Harker tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. The men around him slowly straightened, as if awakening from years of silence. That afternoon, an investigation was opened, one that exposed months of corruption, theft, and deceit. Captain Harker was removed from command, stripped of rank, and quietly transferred under watch. Private Elias Ward, however, was not praised nor promoted. He requested no reward. When his superior officer met him afterward, he asked only one question: "What made you stand against him?" Elias looked out across the parade ground, where the shadows of marching boots had faded into dust. "Because, sir," he said quietly, "if obedience costs a man his honor, then it's not duty, it's surrender." The base never returned to silence the same way again. From that day forward, soldiers spoke of the morning of the stand. It became a whispered legend told to new recruits about the young man who chose principle over power, and how his calm defiance dismantled tyranny in a single motion. Years later, long after the war ended, veterans would recount the story over firelight and fading maps. They would say that Elias Ward was never promoted because he never sought it. He stayed among the men, training recruits, teaching them not how to fight, but when not to. In the archives of the 22nd Infantry, his name appeared only once on a faded report labeled "Disciplinary Incident, Resolved with Honor." But among the soldiers, his legend grew. They said when Harker left the base for the last time, no one saluted. Not out of rebellion, but out of truth. They had learned who truly deserved their respect. Elias would go on to write one sentence in his personal journal, a line found years later by his commanding officer: "A soldier's strength isn't in the orders he follows, but in the conscience he refuses to silence." That line would be engraved on the memorial wall of the base decades later, a tribute to the quiet courage that restores integrity to the uniform. And so the tale endured, not as a story of rebellion, but of duty in its purest form. For every generation that walked that same parade ground, the legend of Elias Ward reminded them that courage is not always loud. Sometimes it's the steady voice that refuses to bend, the stillness that humbles the powerful, the silence that commands respect. In the end, it wasn't rank that made him immortal. It was the moment he chose what was right over what was safe. And for that, the battalion would remember him, not as a hero of war, but as the man who proved that integrity can silence even the loudest authority. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories from states of history.